I think they're the ones that are recommended if you're like on YouTube learning how to use Audacity. I'm pretty sure those are the settings I went with because that's how I learned how to use Audacity. And there are lots of really helpful videos that will tell you how to do more complex things than like this my standard thing I do. My name is KJ, and you're listening to the Supernatural Opinions podcast, where some things in this world are supernatural. My pronouns are she, they, and this is the podcast where I talk to my fellow Supernatural fans about Supernatural, and we share our supernatural opinions. It's been 118 days since the sag-aftra strike began in July, and I thought that when the WGA strike ended a few weeks back, that meant that SAG-AFTRA had a deal right around the corner, and we would be back in no time, but more weeks have passed, and that has not been the case, and we're still hoping that, this is resolved soon, but soon has been getting farther and farther away, it feels like every time, and so I'm back with a new episode of the strike bonuses, and at the end of this, I will have a little sneak peek, that might not be the right word, I will have a little announcement of what I've been up to during the strike, and where you can hear that content, and I hope you all enjoy it very much because I have very much enjoyed making it for you during this time. As for the actual content of this bonus, I am going to be talking about my recording and editing process / setup. So I'm going to be going through my equipment and my programs and what I use. So let's get into that. The very first thing you need as a podcaster is headphones. Everything else is, you can mix and match how you like. I do recommend a good pair of headphones. It doesn't need to be a great pair. It just needs to be really a pair. It's just something you need to have. I have Soundcore Q35 headphones, and they're really ideal for me. They're my kind of everyday headphones that I use when I'm listening to podcasts and music, and I use them wirelessly, but then I can also wire them in. I do recommend wired headphones for podcasting, just because I don't know about other editing softwares, but certainly Audacity, the wireless headphones cause a bit of lag. It can make editing frustrating because where you look to be on the waveform of the audio isn't what you're hearing in the moment. It's just better if you are matched up. I really like these ones in particular because they have noise canceling as well as the option to be wireless and wired. Because in my day-to-day life, I do like to be wireless, or else I snag my headphones on everything. But apparently, all I've needed for a very long time is noise canceling technology. I don't know how I was living without it before, and I don't think I will ever be purchasing a main set of headphones for myself that don't have noise canceling in them because it makes my brain function better. I have a MacBook Air, personally. Honestly, before this, I had a really cheap, like $300 to $500 Acer laptop, and you can podcast off of that thing. You can podcast off of basically anything that runs Apples or Windows, probably other operating systems as well, but those are the two that I'm familiar with. And you can record directly into Audacity, but I honestly don't recommend it. I edit in Audacity, but I only record these episodes, and if you've noticed the audio quality on these strike bonuses isn't the best, it's because I'm recording directly into Audacity. And it does not do as good of a job at cleaning up my audio as Zoom does. Zoom does a phenomenal job, which is what I use to record. I did use Clean Feed at the start of the podcast for the first season, I think. Maybe season and a half. Can't really remember exactly when we made that switch, but we did make that switch at some point. Clean Feed was really great for a free start. My only issue with it was that we couldn't see each other, and so that is a feature that Zoom has. And then also, it recorded me on one track and all of my guests on a second track. And if you're doing that, you have to be really careful that your guests are not speaking over one another because it can make editing really difficult. Zoom, you just have to make sure you go into the settings beforehand and set them to record all of the audio onto separate tracks. As long as you do that before you start, and I think you only really have to do it like once. Once you've done it the first time, you're good. It will remember that setting. And you just want to make sure it's recording on different tracks for editing purposes. Really Really, the only other thing I use is a microphone. And I have a Mayano microphone. Mayana. And it's the, one that, has the boom arm and, it looks very fancy. But my microphone I had before this, and one that I always recommend to new people, is the Blue Snowball. It's really easy to start with. And, these are just USB mics. If you have a MacBook, you might need to buy an adapter for the USB mic to adapt the USB to a Thunderbolt. But once you've done that, then you're good. The Blue microphone, you can usually pick it up for, 50 or 60 bucks. I think I picked mine up, gently used from Best Buy. So, it hadn't actually ever been used, but, the box was damaged, and I think I picked it up for, 40 bucks. So it's, a pretty minor piece. I see a lot of people using those, really expensive, $250, podcasting, blocks that you hook up to your computer, and those are really great. You can do a lot with that, but if you're just, getting started, don't spend the money on that until you figure out if you like it. I've committed to making this podcast for 15 seasons, and I'm not going to spend that money anytime soon. If somebody wants to send me the money for that, that would be ideal. Anyway, on to editing. Like I said, I edit in Audacity. I have been thinking about trying out some other editing softwares during this strike break, but I haven't really gotten around to that, so I'm just mostly going to be talking about my Audacity process, but it's pretty simple, so I think it will be a quick little chat for those who are interested. So open all your tracks in Audacity, first things first, and then I like to kind of even things out a bit, so I go into the effects, and I go into volume and compression, and I compress everything. I have some preset compressor settings that I can't access at the same time that I'm recording, so I don't even know what they are, but I compress them. I think they're the ones that are recommended if you're on YouTube learning how to use Audacity. I'm pretty sure those are the settings I went with, because that's how I learned how to use Audacity, and there are lots of really helpful videos that will tell you how to do more complex things than this is my standard thing I do. Then I amplify by -2.5, and that just kind of brings it all back to where I'm at. Then we get into the, I would say, most important set of settings, and you go into the noise removal and repair, noise reduction, and you find a little piece of audio that should be silent, and you take a sample, and then you select the rest of the track, and you noise reduce any of the background noise. And I usually do that 3 or 4 times in places that I know should be quiet but aren't quiet, so that I make sure it's reducing. And you just play with the settings. It really depends on the tracks. There's not a standard setting for that one. You just kind of have to adjust it until you get rid of some of that noise. Just be careful you don't do too much, because it can mess up your audio a little bit. Audacity is a destructive audio editor, so I recommend keeping the OG copy on your file until you're completely done, and saving periodically to make sure that you don't damage your file more than is necessary. Once I do that individually, that whole compression, everything on each track separately, one track at a time at the start. Then I select all the tracks, and I do truncate silence, which is my favorite thing that Audacity does. And you just set it to however long you want the silence to be, and it will cut any silence that is longer than that down to the size you want it to be. It's very easy to do, and it will do all the tracks so that any long silences are gone. I don't recommend doing this if you use a long silence to indicate where you should be looking later. If you are someone who messes up and then gives a long silence and then repeats yourself, you might want to take care of that first before you do this. This is just a preference for me to do it at the start, because I want to listen to something that's quick and it takes out the silences. It helps my brain to get through it. But also for me, seeing the number go down right at the start by a pretty significant amount of oh, this recording was 1 hour and 20 minutes, seeing it go down to 1 hour and 5 minutes by just taking out those long silences and pauses and places where I've forgotten how to read and my guests are waiting for me to say something, really helps off the top. It's not always 15 minutes, but just seeing that number go down a bunch off the top is very helpful for my brain to get into that editing mood. From there, I go through, and I don't cut usually. What I do is I silence anything. So if somebody is talking over somebody else and I want to get rid of what they say, I will just highlight it and then silence it with the little silence button. And if they're talking over each other, I want to keep both, I will add silence from somewhere on the track to the tracks until they are not over top of each other. And this is so that I can keep the tracks in order and in sync with one another. And then at the end, just hit the truncate silence button again, and it makes all of the track silence. Any silence that overlaps is gone and everything matches up still. It's just how I prefer to do it. There are other ways to keep the track sync. There's a sync function that you can use. It's just, that's my preferred way to do it. It's how I'm most comfortable doing it. And then I slap in the intro and outro. I have them already saved, and I usually select the cold open. Usually I know it when I hear it, and I go, this is gonna be the cold open, so I copy and paste that to the beginning of the episode. I'm like, that's funny, that's how the episode starts. Other editing rules that I have for myself are really just for me. I'm usually pretty careful. Any jokes that I think are not going to be well received or maybe create some fandom controversy, y'all know what jokes I mean. Even if they are funny, there are just some parts of the fandom I don't even want to risk interacting with, so I'll usually cut that. I just don't even want to have the joke out there to come back. Any personal information, I'm sometimes bad because I have known Meredith since we were 13 years old, and I'll just reference something from our hometown or the towns that we currently live in, and I'll cut those because we don't need to dox each other. And I'll also do that for any of my guests. I don't want my guests to dox themselves if they give more than a province, state level their location. I will typically cut that. Also, any references that any guests make to their personal lives, or I make to my own personal life, I will just do a little check-in either with myself or with the person who's made that reference to their own life, and I'll just make sure that they're comfortable with that going into the podcast. Because, sometimes we are really just some friends hanging out and talking about TV, and we forget that other people are going to hear this that aren't currently on the call, and some things are personal and don't need to be shared, So that's just something I personally am always if I'm not automatically taking it out, I'm at least checking in with that person. Ideally, if you edit far enough in advance, you can let your guests listen back and then they have the chance to ask you to take anything extra out. I just don't often give myself that much time to turn the edits around. So I am just a little bit more conservative about it for that reason as well. And usually I'll just cut it without even needing to ask the person, but always ask if you're just not sure. Other than that, what are some things that y'all should know? If your podcast is a podcast that uses clips from whatever piece of media you're talking about or referencing or anything like that, just be aware that that content might be copyrighted. I've chosen not to do that in this podcast, but when I had Series of Opinions, we would occasionally use clips from pieces of media, and I was very selective about what clips I used and how long those clips were and how I used them. I kept them very short for that reason. Honestly, most studios should have better things to do than bother you about your fan-made content. Hopefully they see that as free advertising for their media, but just something to be aware of. And same with music. I think we talked about this when I did my bonus on things to know before you start. Music is also copyrighted, and I feel like the music industry might be a little bit more strict about it. So usually just best to avoid altogether if you can. Sometimes I know it doesn't really make sense not to play a clip, but if you can avoid it, definitely do. If you can read a transcript instead of playing a clip, also ideal. But sometimes you are talking about actor performance and you want to play a clip, and that's totally fine. Just something to think about. Editing wise, download it as a MP3 file or record it using your computer. I don't know. It's not something I've done in a few years, so I'm not going to pretend I know what I'm doing. But basically, once I have the episode where I like it, then I run the truncate silence button again. Everything stays lined up and together and gets rid of all the extra silences. I have definitely forgotten to do this before on my last step, and it's very noticeable. Somebody messaged me right away to let me know that the episode was off. And then I chuck in all the intros, outros, and bits, and then I'm over to Spreaker, which is our podcast host site, and I type up a episode description, upload the file, tag it, and put it out into the world. It automatically posts to all of my social medias, onto all of the podcast apps, and we're good to go from there. It's really not that difficult. I have a hard time with editing because I have a hard time focusing, and I feel like that is also what most people have. Also, there are quicker ways to edit, but please do reach out if you want to learn more about editing, a more in-depth process. I am still looking for editing help on my end. I have had some help, and it's been really, really great to have that help option. But if you are thinking maybe you want to learn how to edit, I would be happy to to teach you how to do all the things that I've just described in this episode and have you work for a little bit while you figure it out. And then if you want to move on and make your own content, I totally would understand that. It doesn't need to be like a permanent commitment to the next 14 seasons, 12 seasons, however many seasons we have left. But yeah, okay, that is where I think I'm going to leave off on the strike bonus content because I don't want to make these episodes too long. I don't think it's that interesting to go into like super deep detail on all these like little tiny editing things. But what I do want to talk about is what content I've been making for you in the meantime that is not this podcast. Queering People Saving Throws, a D&D podcast with the hosts of Saving People Queering Things, August and Elena and Noah and Sam, and it's been so delightful. I learned how to play D&D for the first time, basically. I've become a big D&D fan, actually. I've been listening to other D&D podcasts, and I've had a blast. I play a character who is very different than how I am in real life. I'm not going to give you any details about my character just yet. Our first episode is going to be coming out on Friday, December 10th, so tomorrow for all of you, and I'm really excited for y'all to hear it, and I'm very excited that it's going to be out here. It's been a joy to learn how to play a game that is very narrative based and very open. It's not really my thing. I am not the most spontaneous person, and even though I am a writer, I am definitely like not very comfortable with games that are unstructured. So this was a step out of my comfort zone. I'm also very much not comfortable as an actor, so having a character and doing a character voice has been very difficult for me as well, but in the best way possible. And Noah has crafted what is truly an amazing narrative for us to exist in, and it's been very, very fun to have a reason to hang out with the Saving People Queering Things folk. And so that should be in their feed tomorrow on Friday. I will be sharing it on all of my social medias. I'm sure you'll be hearing lots about it, but yeah, that is happening tomorrow. As always, let me know what other strike bonus content you might want. In the meantime, I don't know what other content I can make for y'all, but I will do my best to provide you something entertaining in addition to those Queering People Saving Throws episodes. And if you've never played D&D before, don't be worried, don't be concerned. I had never played D&D before, and I was in it, so you'll be fine. I think we left a lot of us figuring out the rules in the edit, so I think you'll be able to follow along just fine. If you have any like vague idea of what D&D is, you'll be able to figure it out. And yeah, I don't know when our next strike bonus will be. I'm hoping we don't have to make another one. I'm hoping that the talks that are currently happening, it's Wednesday night for me, Thursday for y'all. We don't have news on an update just at the moment, but there should be one in the next day or so, we're hoping, and hopefully it's good news and I never have to do one of these again and we can start talking about that TV show that we like to talk about. But yeah, I will be back. Thank you guys so much for sticking around and for listening, and I hope you're all excited about this content as well, and have a good day / night / afternoon / evening / weekend. I don't know what y'all are doing, and please do tune in for Queering People Saving Throws. I've been KJ, and this has been Supernatural Opinions. If you enjoyed our show, the best thing you can do is subscribe on your podcast app of choice and tell a friend. Check out our link tree in the episode description for all of our social media and any other supernatural-related projects we might be working on. Send us an email. Our address is supernaturalopinionspodcast@gmail.com, or reach out directly at KJ, at @EditingKJ on all platforms. Thank you to Joe Veretta for our theme song, and our logo was created by Faith Ebert of faithanddesigns.ca. The episode was recorded, edited, and produced by me, Editing KJ. If you want to hear more from me, you can check out my other podcast, Series of Opinions. And last but not least, a huge thank you to all of our guests.